Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome back to our channel once again. Fred Matiang'i was yesterday interviewed by Sam Gituko of Citizen TV. That interview is probably the most watched interview in Kenya this year. I want us to talk about that interview.
It's an incident I would not like to really discuss because it evokes very painful memories and frustration I would like to completely forget. Because it is true, and later on now after the fact, even senior security officers in the country have spoken to me about it and admitted that about the plan and all the things that were planned for my residence. And as I said, it's something I would not like to talk about because it was a very unfortunate incident. It's part of the harassment and frustration that many of us went through after the transition of government, which I personally would not like to see happen to anybody in this country at all. I think the less I said about that incident, the better for me, and I would not like to revisit it. The circumstances around it were very, very frustrating and traumatizing, not just for me, it just, for my family. And there are many people with whom I served in government, including the former president, who went through a lot of challenges in 2023, occasioned for no particular reason. I would not like to go back to those issues. I decided to try and forget those things, just, forgive those who are involved in it and just carry on with life.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to begin this video by asking you guys a very simple question. Assuming we are in 2027 and you are in the polling booth and you are provided with a ballot paper, and in that ballot paper there are two names, Fred Matiang'i and William Ruto. Which one would you take as your preferred presidential candidate and why? I'm asking that question because Fred Matiang'i is emerging as a serious presidential candidate ahead of 2027 presidential elections in the Republic of Kenya. I paid very close attention to that interview and I rate it highly. Although there are some areas I felt that probably Fred Matiang'i would have done better. For example, I felt that this interview came too soon. We are just from the Gen Z protest and we have Sabasaba. So I felt the timing was not very right. And there's also another factor which I noted. If you monitored or if you watched that interview very closely, Fred Matiang'i tried so hard, and I give him credit for it, to be presidential. Remember, Matiang'i is facing a man called William Ruto. William Ruto is firebrand there. And there are those who love William Ruto because of his brand of politics. Then there is Rigathi Gachagua on the other side, whose politics is also firebrand up there. But some Kenyans are not comfortable with William Ruto because of his brand of politics, that firebrand politics. On the other side, there are those who love Rigathi because of his brand of politics, but majority of Kenyans don't subscribe to Rigathi Gachagua's brand of politics. Which means, in my view, Fred Matiang'i ought to be between William Ruto's brand of politics and Rigathi Gachagua's brand of politics, merging somewhere, plus now that presidential image which is trying to project. Maybe with the time, things will fall in place. But I want to pick out a few things which Fred Matiang'i talked about during that interview. Before we do that, for those who are watching the channel for the first time, please take a second or two, click the subscribe button so that next time we produce a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. And to the subscribers, I want to continue thanking you guys for your continued support. Because without that support, this channel cannot be where it is. Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing which Fred Matiang'i talked about is the question as to whether he will be running for the presidency of the Republic of Kenya. He made that very clear that he will be on the ballot.
Fine, thank you.
Now, there has been conversations going on in this country. Are you running for president in 2027?
Yes. Well, of course, I am now working with my colleagues in the opposition, generally, and having conversations with several leaders in the country, and engaging with Kenyans from various walks of life on the future of our country, with the intention of seeing what we can do to fix some of the challenges we are facing in the country and how best we could take our country to the next level. As you may have noticed, and I think I've expressed myself elsewhere before, Kenya does not need an all-knowing savior or ruler for that particular matter. The country needs a hard-working, honest, consensus builder or leader to mobilize the country and create a level of trust in the people of Kenya to invest their energy and their focus in moving a country to the next level. And I would like to make that contribution with my colleagues in the opposition and all Kenyans of goodwill in a way in which we will.
So it is now obvious that Fred Matiang'i is a presidential candidate. The other question which Fred Matiang'i answered during that interview is the question of the party. And for me, that is one of the most difficult questions which Fred Matiang'i was asked. Because remember, Fred Matiang'i allegedly has a party which has a governor and MCS in Nyamira. When he arrived, that party actually owned him in Kisii. But is that party national? Can that party be branded to be accepted in other parts of the country? So that was a very important question. And then there's also Rigathi Gachagua, who has a party, and Rigathi Gachagua is actually trying to persuade Fred Matiang'i to join his new party. Then there is also the Jubilee Party. Of course, they've already declared Matiang'i as the preferred presidential candidate. So Matiang'i answered that question, in my view, excellent.
But what ticket will you use?
As I said, I'm now in consultations with a number of political parties, a number of political leaders across the board. I honestly think that if I made a choice now and stuck to one political party, I will disadvantage the others with whom we are having a discussion. Definitely, as we go forward, there is not going to be a single political party that will form government. The reality is that, we chose democracy and we have so many political parties. In Kenya, we have probably over 89 political parties, and that is how Kenyans want to organize their politics for the time being. I would rather have sufficient conversations and discussions with Kenyans across the board before I finally say this is the format in which I would like to present myself to the IEBC.
There has been association of yourself with UPA party. Some have actually owned you in the Jubilee Party. Where do you belong? And
you'll hear more parties. In fact, this afternoon I'm meeting another political party that is asking whether we can work together. And I've been asked this, by 7 or 8 political parties. You'll hear this. It is actually, let me tell you the truth, Sam. It is flattering that you have political leaders in so many political parties sitting down in their executive committees and in their groups and saying maybe Fred Matiang'i should be our candidate, even before I ask them. And they come over to ask me, can you be our candidate? I don't want to close the door on anyone. I want to have very comprehensive, inclusive, exhaustive discussions with everyone. Then we come together and work on a coalition. In any case, by the way, this game is first of all also persuading people to work together. We are better off as a country when we work together, when we coalesce our forces, when we coalesce our views and our visions and work together. To split ourselves up in so many groups, it doesn't much help, but it's always a pleasure. And frankly, I thank God that I have all these people in 7, 8, 9 parties asking me, can we work together? Can you be our candidate?
The other question which Fred Matiang'i was asked was about Uhuru's project. And for those who've been following this channel very closely, I've always offered my unsolicited advice to Fred Matiang'i against being seen to be Uhuru Kenyatta's project. The fact is, Fred Matiang'i needs Uhuru Kenyatta's support. But Kenyans will reject anything and anybody they perceive to be a project.
Today.
Not yet.
And there are those that feel you are an Uhuru Kenyatta project.
Let me ask you, Sam. You are an intelligent person, very well educated and experienced person. What does that actually mean in practical sense? There are many things that are bandied around. When I was younger, a little more impatient, I used to tell people, there are things that people tell you that when you sit back and analyze them, they wouldn't make sense even to a fool. What does that mean to be someone's project? What does that mean? It's an indelible historical fact that Uhuru Kenyatta appointed me to his cabinet, and I served in his cabinet for 10 years in 3 significant portfolios, and gave me additional responsibilities and so on. But by the way, cumulatively for the 10 years Uhuru was president, he appointed close to 30 or so people to his cabinet. Some of them are serving in cabinet to this day. Others have risen to other responsibilities and so on. So am I a project by dint of the fact that I served in Uhuru's cabinet? And if it's a question of service and so on, why are you not asking me if I'm World Bank's project? Because I've just come from the World Bank.
Have you had a conversation with the former president about your interests?
I have not asked him about whether or not I should run, but we discuss Kenyan affairs every time we have an opportunity. Like I discuss with thousands of other Kenyans whenever I have an opportunity.
I asked that question because, like I told you, the Secretary General of Jubilee Party has claimed you previously a couple of months ago, and we know there are several people that are working with you that also worked with Uhuru Kenyatta.
But Sam, yourself said a while ago that UPA has claimed me. There are several parties that are going to claim me. In an official of a party expressing themselves to say, we would like so-and-so to be our candidate, that is fine. As I told you, frankly, I am fairly flattered. I'm probably the only person in recent times so many parties are claiming, which is a good thing.
Even knowing that a Secretary General communicates about the position of a political party.
But those others who are claiming me are also sector.
And for me, he scored 10 out of 10 in that answer. Another question which he was asked and actually wanted to do an analysis about it was the Narok Rally. He missed that event. Coincidentally, on that Monday, I was heading to Nairobi and I followed the Bomet route because of traffic. And when we arrived at Bomet with my friend, we saw a crowd there. But one thing was clear, even the branding around there was all about Rigathi Gachagua. So I thought maybe Rigathi Gachagua was going to meet or was going to hold a rally in Narok. Later, I learned that these other principals were also going to join. But the rally was clearly branded Rigathi. So I questioned myself, why did Matiangi boycott the event? He answered it. But for me, maybe he realized that going there was going to kind of endorse Rigathi as the kingpin, as the automatic leader, because I think the other co-principals were not prepared for that particular rally. After that, I think Sam Kituku now engaged high gear. That is where I wanted to listen to Matiangi. First of all, he was asked about the Gen Z uprising. Because remember, Matiangi has been a cabinet secretary, particularly for interior. For me, for that, he scored.
And a lot of people ask me, what would you have done differently if you were around or if you were in government in June 2024? Mm-hmm. I say it will never have gotten there. I mean, that could not have happened under my watch, because how would it have gotten to a point where we have a rampage in town by Gen Z and the bulk of our young people, where parliament is overrun? Since independence in 1963, this has never happened before, and even the symbols of parliamentary power carted away, and we did not know that that was coming. And even after it happened, let us assume that we did not know, because I would be very concerned. Parliament is 2 kilometers away from State House. I would be very concerned if that happened, and if it did happen at that particular time, because this is not a surprise accident that happened, as it were. This is something that ought to have been known, and I know the instruments of government myself, having worked in government before. I know the capacity of our National Intelligence Service and so on. I'm somewhere, I don't know where the chain could have broken, but I'm sure that the government must have known what was going to happen at that particular time. But anyway, if it happened the way it happened, I expected personally that the government would have probably orchestrated an all-parties inquiry in Parliament,
right.
Where members of Parliament come together across political parties and have an inquiry to answer the question of what actually happened. Because even now, even if I ask you yourself, what actually happened, you will not say coherently what happened. We didn't take time to find out what happened. Yet, if we had had an inquest, it would have given an opportunity to the Gen Z and the young people to express themselves, to put forward the issues of concern, and it would have provided an opportunity for their parents and other people, civic organizations, faith-based organizations, and other players in society to express themselves. You know, when a conversation is going on in the country, chances are that you are likely to move the same direction, carry the country with you or carry the people with you as you move forward. But when things happen the way they're happening now, those whose responsibility it is to convene and take decisions behave like nothing has happened. Everything is, business as usual. Right. While on the other hand, the same issues that are being raised every day are not being addressed. So I'm saying, can we have a point of engagement, where, and the civic leaders have called this, the Conference of Catholic Bishops has called this. Everyone is saying, look, why can't we have a framework of engagement where expression can be done by our Gen Z? And the issues they're asking, in fact, I need to point this out, that after it happened last year, the president's second statement, not the first one, the president's second statement, when he made commitment of the number of things he was going to do, even I thought, actually, this is hopeful, and the president should be given an opportunity, because he looked like he actually had solutions. He had good proposals about how he was going to reorganize government, reduce wastage, and do all that kind of stuff. Clearly, it hasn't happened, and we are here where we've had, another riot. So I don't know what is going to be done to avoid the next one, but I wish that trajectory and that promise of addressing issues and then meeting and working with the Gen Z.
Right. Then the big question, police brutality during his regime. One of the reasons why Kenyans are very bitter with William Ruto today is because of what Kenyans consider to be police brutality. Basically, the abductions. Matiangi was a cabinet secretary. And during the time, of course, even in the next regime, police brutality will be there. He gave answers. Was the answer satisfactory? Then he also addressed the issue of Rivayala and Msando.
Integrity and the questions of the rule of law. Just before he left office, there were reports about people that were being killed and dumped at Rivayala. The count, according to the International Justice Mission, is at 36. No justice has been served on those persons. What do you know about Rivayala killings?
Thanks for asking me that question, because this is the first time ever I'm having a public opportunity to answer that question directly. Because I've been seeing every time people say I'm going to go into public life, people start playing a song with two stanzas, Rivayala, Ruarakaland, and so on, and you see it repeated over and over again. I've never had an opportunity myself to publicly look the cameras in the face and say this is what it is and so on. When in 2021, the issue of a report was published by a local media about bodies being pulled out of Rivayala, just like I saw last week and the week before. For us, we asked the Inspector General of Police, Mutiambai, what was happening at that time. We agreed that the gravity of the situation is such that the DCI himself should go to that place and find out what's happening. The DCI spent some time there with a team from the DCI. When they came back, we asked for an inquest. We demanded an inquest. At the National Security Council, we asked for an inquest. Can we go into this matter and find out what's happening? The DCI and the police told us, fortunately for us, their bodies. Let us get the families to claim the bodies, then we build the stories from there. We open the file, we take statements from the families so that we understand the circumstances under which these people disappeared and the circumstances under which their bodies were found in Riviera. By the time we were leaving government, the file was open. It was not closed at that particular time because investigations were going on. And that's why I keep saying every time, what happened with the file? I didn't live with the file. In any case, I would have nothing to do with the file as a cabinet minister. That was a police matter. And you know, our detractors or people who like to make negative claims about this are always, you know, they choose when it is convenient for them to say these things. The police service is independent. When they are doing certain things, it's dependent on the minister at other times. As a minister, I would have nothing with that investigation. I wouldn't even influence it for any particular purposes, as it were. The file was open. We didn't live with the file when we left government. So why don't we close the file and let us take action in the direction in which the investigations are pointing us? Besides, by the way, the best way to deal with this matter, in my view, is to have a public inquest so that all of us role players who were in the security sector at that point in time, we go face the inquest, and I'm ready to go before a magistrate or a judge, whoever it is going to preside over that inquest, and say what I know about it. But you see, the problem is throwing stones of convenience or political opportunity when the time is ripe. You know, say every time they say, oh, Riviera and so on and so forth. If I was responsible for a crime that was committed by a police officer when I was Minister for Interior, then I'm responsible for all road accidents that took place, you know, when I was Minister for Interior. I'm responsible for all the violence, robbery with violence cases. I'm responsible for all rape cases that happened and so on and so forth. It's just not possible as it were. And even as we are seated here, there could be crimes that are being committed somewhere. Mm-hmm. We are not saying the minister is in charge. When the bodies were traced out there last week, I didn't hear anybody saying Kipchumba Murkomen is dumping bodies at Riviera and so on.
On Riviera and on Msando, we'll have to explain further. I'm saying this because as a cabinet secretary for Interior, things happened and we just let them to in the hands of the police. Of course, the police is independent. But telling Kenyans that as a cabinet secretary, he didn't really have to follow, he failed. On the issue of Msando, that's another emotive issue. Probably, in the next interview, he should be well prepared for that. I want to conclude about the raid at his residence. When Fred Matiang'i was raided, we all know the objectives. And he didn't want to talk about it. At some point, it was alleged that the main reason why he left the country was to allow him to negotiate with William Ruto. So I think Fred Matiang'i must come out boldly and tell Kenyans about the raid at his residence. I'm assuming if this were Rigathi Gachagua, he would have told the Kenyans what happened there, what these guys were looking for. Probably the government would have also responded. And that's why, in most cases, Rigathi Gachagua is scoring more than these other guys. I don't know the other thing you picked, but for me, that interview was excellent, was good, and probably it helped Fred Matiang'i to address issues of concerns to Kenyans. Until next time, this is Makwiny. By the way, I'm coming with another analysis. I was in Nairobi yesterday, unfortunately. That's why I didn't produce a video in the evening, and also for those who are keen, today I've been off. Until next time, this is Makwiny. Bye-bye.